Now, before the ad break, we had, I guess, even for a moment reflected on the mode of activism that young people have, by and large, taken, right? Which has been a militant take to the streets. You know, I think some of the words that Liza used is a revolutionary type-esque, you know, activism. And I had posed a question about whether or not there's been an appreciation for the sometimes inadvertent costs of that, right? Some commentators have suggested that it is that exact militancy that has disenfranchised and marginalized, particularly female bodies, right? So for that to be done in ways through which we understand, we need a kind of machismo performativity, men with the rah-rah at the front, getting the crowd going, and that sometimes leaves women on the sidelines. So let me ask you, Mapaseka, whether or not you think there's any accuracy to that. You know, are we taking this on at the cost of, by and large, women in the movement?
Yeah. I think she's looking at me. She's a gender activist. She's looking like, you better answer this right.
If you want to go for it, I'm very happy.
But I'll start it off.
You can call her friend.
Look, I think our activism or anything that we do in general stems or is a makeup of who we are as a society. And society is patriarchal, society is sexist. So absolutely 100%. There are women who've contributed to the current movement, absolutely 100%. But is the recognition of those women, does it equate to the amount of effort they've actually put into the struggle? I think maybe not. I think even in sort of the acknowledging of it all, women are not as appreciated as they should be. However, I think at the end of the day, we also need to understand that there is a larger and broader fight, which is the social fight of things. We got our political freedom in 1994. The fight continues with economic freedom and social freedom. And the social freedom has been put on the back burner of black men coming on the table and saying, look, let's rather deal with the economics of it first, and then we will deal with the gender stuff later. So I don't see how women can be accurately represented and recognized and acknowledged right now, whereas we're not socially free and they do not have their rightful place in society.
Yolanda, your thoughts?
Well, the system was built by men. So it greatly benefits men, and women always bear the brunt. I mean, throughout history, we've seen how women were the backbone of all these fights that were happening. Yet, post-94, and we have democracy, and all the women have taken 5 steps back, and all the men are somehow in front and doing the fight. And that is just giving you an idea of how deeply entrenched patriarchy is in our society, to such an extent that now violence is normalized. So I would say that women definitely are bearing the brunt of all the brutality. Yes, radicalism is so very important, but we cannot be having discussions about discussions without including the discussion of gender and how women are suffering at the hands of men.
Liz, I think it's safe to say that the gender question is becoming more centralized. I don't know if it's finally been centralized. The question I have for you is whether or not you feel men in the political space are having enough dialogues amongst each other for that end.
You know, my brother, I'll be totally honest with yourself and your viewers and my co-panelists. There is a lack of political will from ourselves as men to actually see anything change.
Why?
My brother, I mean privilege.
Yeah.
Privilege blinds, privilege is fought for, privilege is defended. And I think we usually make an analogy between sexism, we equate to racism as a system, to say that we can never expect white people to fight actively and full on against racism, because to some extent or another they will benefit from it. So the same thing holds true with patriarchy, the same thing holds true with masculinity and all these other systems that patriarchy gives rise to. And I think at the end of it all, my brother, there is only so much that our sisters can do in fighting the patriarchal system, because like Yolanda highlighted, they didn't build it, number one. Number two, they do not control it. Number three, they do not have a voice within it. So we need to understand, especially as men in this country, that for as long as we continue to be rebellious towards the views of gender equality, for as long as we continue to be resistant against the views of gender equality, then we will continue to have a violent society. We will continue to have a society that has normalized violence of men against women, and to large extents even men against men. Our masculinity has been structured in such a way that it must be expressed through violence. If when you feel pain, you don't hit back, but you cry, then all of a sudden you are not man enough. So I think that is where it stems. It stems from the psychological, cognition of men. It stems from how the society builds us to look at ourselves and therefore look at others. And by others, I mean women, gender non-conforming people, and all the other people within the society that have been erased and whose erasure has been normalized. So I think it is about time. 2020 is the time for us as men to, number one, start having these discussions, and number two, come up with a solid program of action on how we're going to deal with this, because action speaks louder than words, my brother.
Yeah. But can I just add on? And
Yeah, I
say
see you
that,
smiling. I'm sure you want to chime in. Yeah.
I'll just add on and say that we as women shouldn't expect the solution to come from men. As much as your job is to collaborate with our solution. So it's absolutely our responsibility to figure out what the solution is and to carry it out. Men should be there step by step with us to hook in their 2 cents here and there. But essentially, it's women who should be at the center of what the solution is in terms of gender. Another thing is the fact that women have been given this task, by patriarchy to raise kids. So I think it needs to start there. If we as women have this privilege or this responsibility to teach and raise our children, we should be instilling those very same principles that they need to have to be able to respect women, to be able to respect human beings in general. So the kind of revolution that we need and solution that we need starts with mothers instilling the correct principles in their children.
Can I?
Yeah.
I do not agree with that. I feel like mostly women, the responsibility is always placed on women. Where are the fathers to raise these kids that you talk of? So when we say that women need to be responsible and come with the solutions, women do have the solutions, but men are not stepping on the table. And men are not taking accountability. Men are not taking responsibility, because at the end of the day, men are the perpetrators of gender-based violence. Men are the beneficiaries of patriarchy. Men have benefited from patriarchy. Hence they are not bothered whether or not there is a gender equality. They are not bothered. The very same reason why we have so much brutality and dehumanization of women in workplaces. So I think that we cannot be placing the responsibility on women.
Right.
If we want to find solutions to this, we need to, every single one of us needs to come to the table. And we need to actively be participant of change and challenging the current status quo. And a critical part of that is combating our individual stances of violence and the systematic violences, the gender discrimination that is there, and also because violence does not occur in a vacuum. It occurs in a society that promotes and that condones it.
And we'll move on to the economy just now, but still on this point, I have an ongoing concern that a lot of the time, the conversations happen in echo chambers, right? We speak to the likes of Liza, perhaps myself, who have read up about some of these issues. You can hear in which, he's able to systematically lay out what might be the issue, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But I'm not getting a sense that the places where these messages need to hit are actually hitting, right? And I'm sure we can think of various examples of those places. How do we get that right? How do we make sure that this doesn't end on Newsroom Africa's roundtable and doesn't end perhaps in very charged political spaces that are palatable to only a certain type of character, but reaches to, the communities and the corners of the country that it needs to reach to. Liza, let me get your thoughts on that.
My brother, I'll first start by actually qualifying your assertion, because I remember at some point we were having a ritual at home. So there's that kraal arrangement. I'm a Xhosa man. So there's that kraal arrangement and all these things. So I'm there having a discussion with the elders. I raised this issue to say, hey, elders, there's a question of patriarchy, man, that is being addressed here. And I think maybe we should have a discussion around that. You know what the first response was? Nanami ndoni patriarch ngesixhosa.
Right.
Tell me this thing in this Xhosa first before I can
Xhosa,
And I couldn't answer that, and I collapsed. So I just wanted to get across how actually these traditional and cultural and even religious spaces, how resistant they are to these conversations, how resistant they are to these changes. And I think it's a matter of us taking on those conversations, my brother, as uncomfortable as they are. It's a matter of us being persistent. It's a matter of us being consistent. And actually also trying to bring this thing down to the layman level. Because if you check the terms we use, you know, patriarchy, masculinity, femininity, heteronormativity.
What?
I mean, you see, she's shocked that there is such a term. And these are sort of the buzzwords that we use within the gender activist space.
Yeah.
And I think it is also our responsibility as a collective to actually try and bring it down to the layman's terms. To an extent, even if we translate it to isiXhosa, isiSotho, isiTswana, Tshivenda, and we make sure that our people actually get these messages in a way that they will understand. I think that is the first and most important step.
Before we run out of time, I'm struggling to find the quote now, and I'm sure, Liza, you'll be able to help me. Frantz Fanon, I think it was, who was speaking about how young people have to identify their mission in each generation and choose whether or not they abandon it or they go for it and essentially try and solve it. Forgive me, the Fanonians. That's not the direct quote, but you get what I mean.
They're very upset.
I know, they're probably reeling. But Mapaseka, as we come to a close, what do you think our mission is as young people in South Africa 2020? What should we be gunning for come this decade?
Just in 2020? Oh,
Moving forward from here.
Okay. Can I just respond? Respond and say, I absolutely agree with you that men are perpetrators. But what I'm saying is that women have this responsibility to raise kids. It's not our choice. It's what it is. So why not use that platform, manipulate the platform actually, exploit that platform and decide what our children are going to learn. I'm not saying women should raise kids alone. Absolutely, they should not. But because that's the responsibility we have, let's exploit that. And also, I'm not going to trust men to find the solution to our problem. Absolutely not. I cannot trust you. So I think, look, we need to go back to basics. Understanding that we've got two issues, economics and the social side of things. We as young people need to come together using globalization, collaborating as Africans on the continent and in the diaspora. The age of looking at South African issues and how to solve that is over. That is over. Abandon that. Focus on how we can collaborate as Africa and solve our issues together.
Sure. Sadly, that's all the time we have. I am most assured, which is, I guess, a need for us to pick up this conversation sometime during the course of the year. Thank you very much for coming through. Liza Mfana is an activist and deputy president of the EFF Student Command. Mapaseka Moroua is the founder and host of Political Quickie. And Yolanda Khonziwe is a national steering committee member of the TheTotalShutdown Movement. To all three of you, thank you very much for your time.